Hello, everyone. I'm Miss Nancy, and welcome to NCNW Storytime. Today, I'm excited to read a story about Katherine Johnson. In honor of Women's History Month, I thought I'd read this book, A Computer Called Katherine, How Katherine Johnson Helped Put America on the Moon. I even wore my NASA shirt in honor of Miss Katherine Johnson. Let's get started. A Computer Called Katherine, How Katherine Johnson Helped Put America on the Moon. Written by Suzanne Slade and illustrated by Veronica Miller Jamison. Everywhere she went, Katherine counted. She counted her steps to church. She counted the plates on the dinner table. She even tried counting the stars in the sky. Most important of all, Katherine counted the days until she could start school. Finally, at age 5, she followed her brother hundreds of steps to the 2-room schoolhouse. An excellent student, Katherine devoured thick books and added numbers at the speed of light. So the teacher decided she would skip first grade and start in second. But Katherine was such a fast learner, she later skipped 5th grade too. And before you could say mathematician, magician, she was a grade ahead of her older brother. Katherine loved math because it was easy to see if an answer was right or wrong. Meanwhile, most everyone in town was arguing about right and wrong. Some people said it was wrong for children with different skin colors to attend the same school. Others said it wasn't right for women to work at the same jobs as men. Their arguments seemed wrong to Katherine, as wrong as 5 plus 5 equals 12. She believed everyone should be treated the same. So she kept working hard in school and dreamed of a future when all people would have equal rights. Katherine finished 8th grade when she was only 10 years old, but her town didn't have a high school for Black students. Determined to keep learning, she counted the dusty miles, 120 in all, as her family moved closer to a school she could attend. There, she took an exciting math class called geometry. She learned how points and lines made shapes, triangles, trapezoids, and perfect parallelograms. And her love for math grew exponentially. At 15, Katherine started college. She flew through every math class at West Virginia State, so a professor taught harder classes just for her. In advanced geometry, she plotted points on a graph. When she connected the points, they created a beautiful U-shaped curve called a parabola. It was love at first sight. After graduation, Katherine became a math teacher. Back then, people said women could only be teachers or nurses. Katherine knew that was as wrong as 10 minus 5 equals 3. She believed women could be anything, scientists, lawyers, or mathematicians. So she set out to prove it. Katherine discovered a research center in Virginia that was hiring women mathematicians. They were called computers because they made calculations that helped the men engineers design airplanes and flight plans. To Katherine, it added up to the perfect job. All day long, she punched buttons on a calculator just like the other women. She solved long math equations just like the other women. She wrote answers on a huge data sheet just like the other women. But Katherine wasn't like the other women. She asked questions, lots of questions. What were her calculations used for? Why were they important? How did her answers help design airplanes and flights? The men engineers noticed the woman who asked intelligent questions and how quickly she solved difficult math problems. So they asked Katherine to join their space team. Its mission: send America's first astronaut into space. Katherine said yes. Then she discovered that women weren't allowed to attend the group's meetings. She knew that was wrong as 5 times 5 equals 20. So she asked if she could go. Women don't ever go to those, the engineers replied. Is there a law against it? Katherine asked. No. So Katherine showed up at the next meeting, ready to work. Astounded by her geometry skills, the team asked her to calculate when America's first space flight should blast off. Katherine agreed. But first, she asked questions like, where should the rocket splash down? How high should it fly? When should it land? With that information, Katherine carefully computed the rocket's flight path, a beautiful U-shaped curve. Next, she worked backward to figure out the time it should blast off. Then she began counting the days until launch. On May 5th, 1961, Alan Shepard blasted off. Following Katherine's flight path, he soared into the silvery sky. 15 minutes later, he splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean, right on schedule and on target. Soon, Americans began dreaming of a longer flight around the entire Earth. To figure out the math for this long, complicated trip, engineers decided to use their new room-sized computer that worked much faster than people. But astronaut John Glenn trusted Katherine more than a machine. He wouldn't step one foot onto the rocket until she said the computer's calculations were correct. Happy to help, Katherine checked every number. On February 20th, 1962, John Glenn became the first American to orbit Earth. Then people began wondering if an astronaut could travel all the way to the moon. Both the Soviet Union and the United States wanted to be the first to land there and win the space race. Katherine knew this flight was incredibly long and dangerous. Every calculation would have to be perfect. One math mistake and the rocket would zoom right past the moon. As NASA's computer hummed and computed a flight path to the moon and back, Katherine went to work too, double-checking the machine's calculations. But this was the most complicated geometry problem she'd ever seen. One of the points, the spacecraft was flying incredibly fast. Her target, the moon, was constantly circling the Earth while spinning. Some people thought the problem was too difficult to solve, but Katherine knew that was as wrong as 25 divided by 5 equals 4. She calculated and computed. She plotted and planned. She created a bold, brave path all the way to the moon and back. Ten, 9, ignition sequence starts. Heart racing, Katherine leaned close to the small television screen. 7, 6, 5. She held her breath as powerful flames exploded on the launch pad. 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The rumbling rocket slowly rose above the ground, above the smoke, above the clouds, then disappeared into ink black space. 4 days later, as Neil Armstrong took his first steps on the moon, Katherine smiled and began to count. Girls are capable of doing everything men are capable of doing. That was a quote by Katherine Johnson. That's what KJ stands for. If you want to know, ask a question. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Katherine also said that. But here we see, it says a Mercury project. This was the proposed flight path of Alan Shepard's first American space flight. That's the actual pictures. And here's a picture of Katherine Johnson at her desk. And this is a NASA report that was co-authored by Katherine. And here is Apollo's proposed flight path to land on the moon. I'm glad you joined us today, and I hope you enjoyed learning about Katherine Johnson and her help to get America's flight to the moon to win the space race. So thank you for joining us. Come again to NCNW Storytime.